Luke 22:31-34. And the Lord said, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan hath desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for thee, that thy faith fail not. And when thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren. And he said unto him, Lord, I am ready to go with thee, both into prison and to death. And he said, I tell thee, Peter, the cock shall not crow this day before thou shalt thrice deny thou knowest me.
All right, a little tough getting around those old English there. All right, so this is that classic encounter that Peter had with Jesus that was an eye-opener. He didn't know it would be an eye-opener, but he found out it would be an eye-opener. That when you have a confrontation with Jesus and you're standing in front of him, looking him right in the eye and disagreeing with what he's telling you is about to happen, and then when it happened. Remember we talked about that look, that Peter looked over and saw Jesus. Jesus was looking right at him. All this moment came to his mind immediately. Okay? And what did he do? Actually, do you remember what Peter did right after Jesus looked at him? And Peter remembered this conversation that he had with Jesus. He said, oh, you're going to deny me? He says, no, I won't. Yes, you will. No, I won't. And then when he did when he
wept?
He went out and wept, didn't he? Mm-hmm. Okay, good memory. Went out and wept, right? So, all right, well, let's take a look at this. And we're going to start kind of scattered around here. We'll ask birthday boy if he wants to start out. And Andrew looks around. And start us out here.
All right. Luke 22. This third and final lesson in our character study of the Apostle Peter deals with Peter's post-conversion life in Christ. You may recall that Jesus forewarned Peter that he would deny that he even knew Jesus. Jesus told Peter, however, that he was praying for him so that his faith would not fail overall. Jesus also instructed Peter that when he became converted, he was to strengthen his other brethren.
All right, let's just stop and pick up a few words here from our text and then from my thoughts on that. The word converted. You know, a lot of times this word is not used correctly. And I'll tell you how. I'll tell you why. Converted. What's another form that people often use of this word, another form of it? I'll give you a clue. Missionaries like to use this word.
Converted. No, wait, not conversion. Conversion.
Conversions, okay.
Conversion.
All right. Now, before we get into this, what do you suppose is usually meant by this, just kind of across the board, and why I'm saying that this is not a correct usage of this idea?
Salvation or baptism.
Right, right. Usually, they're equating this with people's first faith experience. Okay? So that if you receive Jesus as your Savior, that's a conversion. Have you heard that, Marlene? Have you heard that idea, that thought? Does it sound familiar? Brian, you heard of this? Probably not. Okay. Who has, though? Who has? All right, you've heard this. Okay. All right. This is not really correct. Now, I understand that there's been a change that's taken place, okay, from unsaved, lost child of the devil, as it were, going to hell. And when they accept Jesus Christ as their personal Savior, there's, in a sense, well, there's a change. Okay, now they're a child that has, eternal life. But wasn't the Apostle Peter already saved? In fact, wasn't he already baptized by John the Baptist? All right, so you've got a salvation experience and you've got a baptismal experience, then why the need to be converted? So you see, this is not really an accurate, when you get to the Bible usage, and this is where they're getting it. They're getting it from this passage we just read. And so, if you're going to use terms that you pick up in the Bible, by all means, let's try to be as accurate and use them as accurately as we possibly can. Okay? Yes?
Where does that word come from?
I didn't look up that word as far as the Greek. That's a good, unless I explained it here, I don't remember. But that's a good question. Andrew, do you want to give us some little background on that? Okay. But in the English, just stick with the English. Let's stick with the context right now. when Jesus said, he said, but I'm praying for you, and when you are converted, okay? And again, he's already had the first faith experience, and he's already been baptized, but he lacked conversion, okay? And so just on the surface, before Andrew gives us maybe some background on Greek, just on the surface, because most of us, wouldn't understand the Greek or to read it anyway. What are your thoughts on that? When you are what? Give me some other words. How would you explain this to someone that's asking you about what you're asking your opinion? Well, what did Jesus mean by that? What do you mean by that?
Dedicated,
Hmm?
maybe like rededicated.
Dedicated. I like that word. Okay. So let's just bring this on down. When you are converted, when you are, so use a different color here. When you are dedicated. Okay. Other words?
Changed.
Changed.
Committed?
Committed. Is that two M's
Yeah.
or one M? I'm gonna throw two M's in there. Is it two T's? Okay, I don't have spell checker up here.
No, it's right.
Okay, changed, dedicated, changed, committed. And then we could use other expressions, all in. Yeah, I'm all in, okay? All fours, okay? So you get the idea. This really is what Jesus meant. When you reach that level of intensity in your desire to be my disciple, when you do what in other places that I have asked you to do is pick up your cross and follow me. When you get to that level, then take all of that, and we'll break this down in our lesson. Take all that energy, and direct it in a certain way. Okay, Andrew, what do you got on conversion?
Well, it's epistrepho.
What's the first part?
It's EP-EE. I mean, that's just how you.
Epistrepho?
Yeah.
Okay.
STREPHO. Strepho.
Strepho, okay. The epi is a prefix, it'd be on or upon, so it's something to intensify it, okay.
Yeah. And it's to revert, literally, figuratively, or morally. To revert, what it says. And then it says come, go again, convert, return, about, or again.
Okay. All right. So it's kind of an action word, intensified by the prefix preposition, okay. So when that's here the word act on, or act upon? No?
There's some examples. Matthew 9:22 says, but Jesus turned him about, and when he saw her, he said, daughter, be of good comfort, your faith has made you whole. And the woman was made whole from that hour. So Jesus turned him
Okay.
about.
Okay, all right, a different direction.
Yeah.
Okay.
It says, and if the house be worthy, let your peace come upon it, but if it not be worthy, let your peace return to it.
Okay, okay,
So forth.
to turn about or to return, okay. So it sounds like kind of a change of direction.
Then neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes.
Okay, they'll go back in that direction, okay. All right, so I get the idea, it's motion, it's a direction which you're heading to turn about and take a different course, okay? To trump one course with another, the honor upon, every honor upon, okay? To replace one course with another. So converted, he obviously was on a certain, the way he was thinking was following a certain path or line of reasoning, and he thought he knew that course, he thought he knew his heart. Jesus says, well, you don't. But when you do make that change, then you become that dedicated or committed person, then strengthen the brethren. Okay, well, does that help? Idea of changing a course, okay. By turning around. Okay, where did we break off here? Number 2 then, Andrew?
Yeah. Luke 22 says, we all know the story, how that Peter did in fact deny Jesus, just as was foretold, and because of it, Peter went out and wept bitterly. Afterward, being very discouraged over his failure to make good on his word, Simon Peter decided to return to his former lifestyle of fishing. And we note that because of his powerful and influential personality, other disciples decided to go along with him. But Jesus would have none of that. After all, the Lord had called him to be a fisher of men, and that is what the Lord expected of this man, failure or no failure. Jesus wasn't about to let Peter get away that easily.
All right. Well, let's go to Luke 22, 54 through 62. This is the situation where we're just revisiting the situation. How we did deny him, and we talked about this, and to try to put ourselves in that moment and to see maybe what brought these things about. And again, this is just right after this discussion in our text, Luke 22:31 through 34, where Peter flat out said, "I will go to prison and or to death if necessary for you. And I will never deny you." So, all right, looks like we've got Jeannie just a second. Morning, Jeannie. Are you joining us today? All right, great. Well, we're just getting started here. We're just getting started. Oh, no, I tried here a minute ago. All right, so here we are in Luke chapter 22, 31 through, or 54 through 62, okay? And Brother Noah, would you read that for us? 54 through 62.
Then they took him and led him and brought him into the high priest's house, and Peter followed far off. And when they had kindled a fire in the midst of the hall and were set down together, Peter sat down among them. But a certain maid beheld him as he sat by the fire, and earnestly looked upon him, and said, "This man was also with him." And he denied him, saying, "Woman, I know him not." And after a little while another saw him, and said, Thou art also of them. And Peter said, Man, I am not. And about the space of 1 hour after another, confidently affirmed, saying, Of a truth this fellow was with him, for he is a Galilean. And Peter said, Man, I know not what thou sayest. And immediately, while he yet spake, the cock crew. And the Lord turned and looked upon Peter, and Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had said to him, Before the cock crow, thou shalt deny me thrice. And Peter went out and wept bitterly.
Okay, all right. So in the moment, can you imagine, I mean, what made this worse was his recollection of him saying, I will never deny you. That's what made it worse. If he had just denied him those 3 times, that would have been bad enough. But the fact that he said, I will never deny you, and put himself in a certain light, or put himself in a certain light, his own image, and then it was crushed. He crushed it. So he set himself up, and then he brought himself down, just as Jesus foretold. That's what made it worse, and that's why the bitter weeping, okay? Because of the memory, when he remembered that conversation. All right, but we're examining now his rebound, okay? And Jesus was not going to leave him in that situation, not after investing 3 years into the man's life and knowing that he could come out of it. Okay? Now, if Jesus has any hope in us at all, if there's any flicker of possibility, he's going to keep working with us. Because he knows us better than we know ourselves, obviously. And so there was another encounter that he and Peter had to have, and he made sure of it. Even though Peter said after this, just utter, I guess, frustration and so easily so rocked by his denial, that he just said, I'm going fishing. I'm going back to fishing. That's where I began 3 years ago. I'm going back to fishing. And so others said, well, we're going with you. And, well, why would they go? They didn't deny Jesus. Why would they be so quick to join him?
He was kind of the leader.
He was kind of the leader, wasn't he? Yeah, he was that kind of guy. Okay? And so he basically, maybe unwittingly, influenced them, okay, to go fishing also. So they're now off course. You talk about, having to turn around and go a different direction. They are now totally off course. Because 3 years earlier, Jesus said, follow me and I will what? Make you what? Fishers of men. Okay? And he had been doing that for 3 years. Now he's just going to go out there and fish for fish. Right? That's not what God had called him to do. So, as we keep reading our lesson here, how about, Andrew, we'll give you a couple more there, then we'll have someone else read. Where are you, number 3?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That is why Jesus intentionally met up with Peter on the seashore to encourage him to return to the ministry to which he had been called. Jesus wanted to reassure him that he was very much wanted by the Lord to complete the assigned task, that of strengthening the brethren and of making new disciples for Christ.
All right. And we have to understand, the young people will say, well, it's my life. No, like that. Whoa, what, did you hear me the other day? But that's what we say, when there's confrontation with authority, okay, AKA parents, okay. It's my life, and I'm old enough to make my own decision, and I'll do what I want, okay. Sarah, does that sound familiar? Okay, it's my life, right?
You at our house either.
No, I just was a teenager once. Okay, all right. Well, okay, yeah. I guess I was still thinking stuff I know. And you're almost not a teenager, by the way, young man.
Almost.
And then you fill in the rest. Okay, it's my life. Okay. The whole thrust of the idea of discipleship is to find ourselves on a course, on a pathway that's already been carved out. We're not creating the path. We don't have a big machete and we're just whacking through the jungle and people are following us. We're blazing a trail. That's not it at all. The trail's been blazed. We're just finding the trail and following it. That's discipleship, okay? To follow a path, right? So Peter had gotten off of his path. Okay, he was gonna go back to his old life. And after all, it's my life. I'll decide from here forward what I want to do. And Jesus is trying to get him back on that path and say, look, all that I taught you, all that I showed you, our bumps and bruises along the way, the lessons, and all this, he says it was so that you could be a channel. Okay? It's not just your life anymore. Okay? Everything that I gave to you, I handed off to you, because I know that I'm going to go back to my Father in heaven, so you're not going to see me personally anymore. So I want you to take everything that I poured into you, into your life, and now be in that channel so that it will flow through you. Okay? If it just sits there, then we become like what? Geographically speaking, in the Holy Land. If it enters in and doesn't go out, we become like what geographical location in the Holy Land that's sitting there larger than life?
Dead Sea.
The Dead Sea. Okay? So we don't want to be a Dead Sea where it just sits there and puddles up and is not released, it doesn't go out. Okay? So we want to be a channel, a conduit for the truth. And so that's the whole reason why he said to them, all authority is given to me. He says, you go forth now, okay, and you make disciples. It's got to flow through. Well, at this point, on the seashore there with the fishing net, nothing's flowing through. It's sitting there. It's all stopped. Okay? Jesus said, no. That's not what it was all about. Never intended for that. Okay? Get back on that course. Turn yourself about. Be converted and get back to the earlier calling of being a fisher of men. Okay? All right. So let's. We're just up.
I'm on number 4.
You're on number 4. Keep going.
The apostle, however, was still suffering from embarrassment and humiliation over his denying Jesus, and therefore wasn't ready to just jump back in there. Jesus knew that this is why he was persistent with the apostle. Yet, even while persistent, note how gentle the Lord was as he sought to restore that faith for which he said he had been praying.
All right. So here we've got now, we're dealing on an emotional level, highly charged. He's still highly charged. He's come down from the bitter weeping, so that's behind him, but the memory's still there, the hurt is still there, the shame is still there. So now Jesus has to kind of gently, massage him back onto this path, okay? And so, so he's very careful how he does it. He's not in his face, okay? He's not in his face about it as far as, raising his voice and screaming at him, how dare you throw your education away, in other words, kind of like what we would do as people. But he just, it's masterful how he handled the situation. Okay? Peter, do you love me? Amazing. He didn't have to explain it, break it down, dissect it. Peter, do you love me? Okay? Going off of what Peter was already thinking and feeling, just, do you love me?
Well, he didn't rehash it to the point of, what were you thinking? You
Right.
said this and you said that,
Yeah.
and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
He didn't have to do that.
No.
Because Christ knows what we need.
Yes.
It's like
Yeah.
you said, he can see
Yeah.
right to the heart. And that's why, it could just be, we could be dealing with something really huge and we read something or hear something. It could just be one sentence. There, and then the entire thing is dealt with now.
Yeah.
You now have a way out
Yeah.
on just one sentence.
Yeah.
It can be that small.
Yeah.
And Jesus asked the same question three
Yeah.
times.
3 times.
And then
Yeah.
it wasn't a long conversation,
Uh-huh.
that's the beauty of how well he knows us.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And granted, that's an advantage.
Yeah.
Okay. Granted, that's an advantage when he's now dealing with this situation. He knows us. Okay. Whereas people to people sometimes we can't get into their thoughts. But a lot of times because of the closeness, we really do know them better than we maybe give ourselves credit for. But it's how we handle it. It's how we handle it that's the crucial. Okay. With that knowledge, it's what we do with it. But he got Peter to, and Peter was even frustrated in that conversation, right? He got a little frustrated even in that setting. Again, he's totally crushed. His ego has been flattened out and run over, okay? He is in no mood to boast, and he knows he can't even boast at all now, okay? How can he? And so he got a little niffed at the 3rd time. He said, you know I love you, you know I like you. And so he just kept him, kept him back to the task. Feed my sheep, feed my lambs, feed my lambs. Okay, just short sentences. Get back on task. He didn't have to break it down or explain. Peter knew exactly what he meant because all that training was there. Okay, okay. Now what? No, now what do you want me to do again? Okay, hang on. What now? Feed. Didn't need to do that. Okay, it was already there. It's just that he wasn't doing it. Okay?
And I think the other disciples, he was training all those men to be leaders.
Yes.
And to take charge and to be the ones out front and all that. But for Peter, he had a special ministry for him because we don't see that he's talking to any of the other disciples like John or Andrew or Bartholomew or whoever, right, and saying specifically you need to feed. They all received amazing instruction those 3 years. But for Peter, it was specific. It was direct. So when he said this is your ministry, Peter.
Yeah.
This is what you're supposed to be doing, and you're supposed to be feeding his sheep, which means that you're supposed to be the one to instruct these lambs right here, and then of course all the others to come.
Yeah. Yeah. When you are converted, do what? When thou art converted,
Strengthen your brother.
strengthen my brethren. Strengthen your brethren. Okay. And so he wasn't doing that. He wasn't strengthening the brethren. But oh my, when we open up the book of Acts, it's a whole different story. It's like, it's like Well, how many know the dynamics, I'm sure we all do, the dynamics of forgiveness on both ends? You know the dynamics when you forgive someone. Oh, it just releases something in you. And you also know the dynamics of being forgiven. Oh, thank you. You know all that. So it's like this situation here on that seashore with that fire and all that and the fish and that conversation. It's like I'm not gonna throw you away. Okay, and it's not just because I've invested. It's just I love you. I need you. Okay, so he brought that. In other words, nothing's changed on my end. I'm still who I am. Yeah, you shifted, you moved. Okay, yeah, you said you wouldn't, and you did. Okay, but that never came up in the conversation. I told you that never came up in the conversation. Okay, why crush him? I mean, why? He's already crushed. Why finish the job? Why finish him off? Okay, what would that do? Okay. So he just gently, like I said, just massaged him and brought him back to where he wanted it as badly as Jesus wanted it. Okay, and he worked it beautifully. He just worked it absolutely beautifully. All right, Vicki, let's jump over to another meeting. And and where did we stop? Did you read 3, Andrew? You read 3, didn't you?
Yeah, so you're on 5.
Okay, so Vicki's up. Okay.
Jesus was dealing with a broken spirit, a spirit which had earlier been filled with personal pride. Peter had since discovered that he was in fact vulnerable, just as Jesus said he was. His faith had been torn and needed mending, you might say, like a fishing net. As members of a New Testament church, we too are there to reach out to one another and to help them to mend, if necessary, a torn faith. We realize, though, that such is only possible as we allow our brethren to apply the healing balm to our hurting faith.
Let's stop right there. There's factors involved. Okay, when two people are involved, Andrew, can you find this for me? An obedient. How does that go? Proverbs. An obedient ear. Can you find an obedient ear? Two people are involved. Okay. And in this conversation, this discussion, okay, the goal is healing what was torn, like a net. Okay, if the net was torn, then it would defeat the purpose of the net. How can you be a fisherman with a torn net? And so they have to stop and mend their nets. In fact, there's a passage in there where they were mending their nets. Okay, and so Peter needed to be mended. Okay, the net of his heart and in pride needed to be mended. But it takes two for this dynamics. Okay, obedient ear. Read that Proverbs.
Oh, I don't have it yet.
Well, you don't have it yet. Okay. I just remember part of it. Obedient ear. Okay. So back to what Vicki read. We realize, though, that such is only possible as we allow our brethren to apply the healing balm to our hurting faith. And so, if the goal is healing, then everyone has to jump on board toward that goal. Okay? So there has to be the giver of counsel and the receiver of counsel. Okay? The applying of the healing balm or ointment and the receiving of the ointment. Okay? You can offer me ointment, but unless I receive it and apply it, it's not going to do either one of us any good. Okay? An obedient ear, that's Old King James. I think it's probably the same in the New King James. But the idea is that the counsel offered is most effective. Any counsel given is most effective if it's on an obedient ear, if it falls on an obedient ear. Okay, otherwise it's just this. okay? Well, how do you get an obedient ear? Well, a lot of times, just throwing that counsel out there and it's being met with resistance, that's not an obedient ear. Sometimes you have to set it up, right? You've got to set up the situation, okay? In order for that ear to be opened, in order to receive that counsel that you know is good. They just don't know it, and they won't if their ear is closed. Well, Jesus was a master at beginning to open the ears. Okay? Now I realize he was not successful with everybody. We talked about the Pharisees a lot, and you know they had a disobedient ear. Their ears were closed. Well, there's not a lot you can do about that, other than just stay on task and just be true to yourself and try not to get in their way, so that the ownership on that then falls totally and squarely on them. Okay? We just don't want to be part and parcel of the blockage or hindrance ourselves. Okay? That's all. So, all right, Vicki, I'll have you keep reading.
Unless Peter responded favorably to Jesus' gestures to rekindle his faith, he would never have returned to his place in the Jerusalem assembly. But aren't you glad he did? In the early chapters of the book of Acts, as well as Peter's 2 epistles, is seen a converted man, a man who reached out to strengthen his brethren, just as Jesus had commanded him to do. Yes, Simon Bar-Jonah was back, and oh my, look out, he is full of the Holy Spirit. What a difference a humbled spirit and restored faith made in this man's life. Peter had finally learned what Jesus was trying to demonstrate for 3 years, that in order to be a disciple of Christ, one had to do more listening than talking, more kneeling than knowing. He discovered that Jesus wasn't as much interested in one's mistakes or failures, or in their backgrounds, as much as he is interested in what they're willing to do for him now in their present lives.
I stop right there. Jesus is all about change. But in order for him to acquire the changes and the place he wants you to land, then it's important, the process is important, and the initial start is important, okay? And so, what you found it?
It's Proverbs 25:12.
25:12, okay?
Well, 11 says, it goes together, says, a word fitly spoken is like apples of gold and settings of silver.
Uh-huh.
Like an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold is a wise rebuker to an obedient ear.
Ah, okay. I love that, don't you? Let's all turn there. I want us all to see that with our eyeballs. And where was that? Proverbs 25?
11 and 12, yeah.
Proverbs 25, 11 and 12. I want us all to look at that. And probably we'll read a little differently from the Old King James to the New. A word fitly spoken. Let's break that down. A word fitly spoken. What's a word fitly spoken? What does that suggest to you? Allie? What would you talk to your girlfriends, don't you, once in a while? Hey, they ever complain to you about anything? You know? Teenage girls, yeah, that's a good one. All right, so you guys you and a friend are engaged in a conversation, and she's asking your thoughts and your counsel and your opinion on some things. So you want to help her the best you possibly can. So you want to give her a word fitly spoken. What are you trying to do for her?
Tell her stuff that she'll understand.
That she'll understand, okay? That meets the need, okay? So she said, you know, I'm having a hard time with my boyfriend, and your word fitly spoken is, do you know Orion's belt? I saw Orion's belt the other day. Well, what you're saying is true. You saw it, it was 3 stars and all that. Okay. That wouldn't quite fit the word fitly spoken, right? Okay? You have to meet the need, all right? So her emotions are all wound up, and you're there, and she's kind of relying on you to kind of give her some sense and sensibility and bring her down and help her out a little bit. So that's what it is. So you're there to give a word properly and appropriately dispensed, and that fits the need, that fits the moment, that matches the moment, okay? And so I know what we do a lot of times though. What we do is we go out, we grab this and we grab that, we kind of just heap it on, and probably a lot of it's not really necessary. You know, we've gone beyond fitly or necessarily, okay, what's needed when we start piling on. And then now it's just all out war. All right, so a word fitly spoken, is that the New King James again? Is that fitly spoken?
Yeah.
Okay. Is like what? A word that's it fits in the conversation. The words that you're speaking fit like a hand in a glove. Okay. They then, if they do, then they become like apples of gold in pictures of silver. Apples of gold, very valuable, okay, in its setting. Okay. I think of a painting. And I've seen this online, you know, in fact I'll use it in a bulletin. Apples of gold and pictures of silver. They just kind of just harmonize, you know, gold and silver in this whole setting, apples in pictures. And so I see this as a word fitly spoken, as that fits in just right, is a total harmony and of great value. Of great value, okay? And then he goes on to talk about as far as value, verse 12, as an earring of gold and an ornament of fine gold, so is a wise reprover. Those are the words that are being spoken, the counselor. So is a wise counselor, okay, upon an obedient ear. They fit together. They just fit so wonderfully together, okay? But a lot of times, as I said, sometimes it has to be set up. That situation has to be set up. Okay? And a lot of times the setting up takes more work than the actual engaging of the conversation. Okay? And so what happened to Peter that night around the fire set up the conversation with Jesus on the seashore. Okay? That conversation with Jesus on the seashore probably went as well as it did because it was set up. Peter had already experienced the failure, and it was magnified. Hence, he went out and wept bitterly. So now he's primed for correction. He's primed now to be converted, okay, because he fell so far on his own, you know, accord. And so now Jesus is just gently going to pick him up. The situation's already been in place, already been enacted. Now we're just going to follow up that situation now with working it back up to what he wants. And so, would you say in that conversation by the seashore that Jesus offered a word fitly spoken? Okay, and would you say that Peter's ear now was in position to be obedient? Okay, one set up for the other. Okay. However, as I noted, that there was a little pushback, again because of the emotion of embarrassment and shame and humiliation. A little pushback is that, Lord, you know I like you. You know I like you. You know, you know everything. In fact, he said, you know everything. Well, wait a minute now. Back here, you don't know everything. You don't know what I'm going to do. You don't know what I'll say. Oh, but now it's, Lord, you know everything. Eh?
Do you think there's some significance that he did this in front of everybody?
Yeah, I think
When
so.
Peter
yes.
pulled Jesus aside and he was privately trying to rebuke him.
Uh-huh.
I think Jesus said what he told Peter to get behind me, Satan, and all those things.
Uh-huh.
I think he said that loud enough so everybody could hear.
Uh-huh.
Because I think they needed to hear that rebuke. But do you think there's something to be said there that he waited till everybody was around the fire,
Mhm.
and it was probably very tense.
Yeah.
Because they kind of were figuring out that this is Christ, that he didn't really go away.
Uh-huh.
And now Peter knew exactly who he was when Jesus from the shore had told them that they weren't catching anything, and he told them to cast their net on the right side of the ship and then row the boat, and then they did, and Peter didn't even wait. I picture him just went right into the sea and went to go see him. But do you think there's significance there in him doing it in front of everybody?
Yeah, I think in order for him to represent that authority that, you know, once converted, and what he did, he's standing up with authority, right? In order for them to regain that respect, because, you know, during the 3 years, you know, he's a standout. Okay, he's that guy that's out in the front of the class with his hand up, as we've noted. And so I'm sure that he had some of the respect because a lot of them weren't willing to do all that. But that person is and was. And so I think that, but then when he fell, lost the respect. Okay, so how does Jesus bring those two together? Because they're going to have to work together after he goes back to heaven. He's going to work together. So how do you bring them back together where they respect him again? I think your point is that he did this in front of them, saying, look, I'm willing to set him back in position. I have confidence in him. Okay? And so therefore you should as well.
I think, you know, and I mean, I didn't really have a point, but
Okay.
that's a good point. I was actually, you know, I was a genuine question. But that makes sense because, you know, with, like you said, they have to respect him. And I think because John was right there when he said, I don't know him, I don't know him, I don't know him. And there was, you know, the other disciples undoubtedly got wind of that, and they're like, well, why would you just go back to fishing? Why aren't we continuing on?
Yeah.
You know, why, what did all that mean? You know, well, Peter was supposed to be the one to put it all together with all the training that he had.
Yeah.
But yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because they had to work together, so after this, and I think they did have a great deal of respect. And, I mean, think about it. Someone falls and then gets back up. Don't you have respect for that person? You know, it says a righteous man will fall 7 times and get back up. Don't you have respect for that person? Just keeps getting back up on that horse. I mean, they got a fighting spirit, and you appreciate that. And especially, do you appreciate that if you're going to, you know, in a way, in a sense, follow that in the wake of their energy and their leadership? You appreciate that. I'll tell you, one of the reasons Donald Trump is so far in a way up in the polls over the other candidates is that he has the respect of the American people. They may not like everything about him and everything, he's braggadocious and all that. That's who he is. But they respect what he's saying and what he stands for. And he's not playing politician. He's not owned by anybody. That's why he's so far out. Okay? Whether he'll be nominated, I mean, I don't know. I'm not here to say that. I'm just saying that there's a reason why he is so far out, because they respect him. Even the bankruptcies and stuff that he's had in the past, he's bounced back. He's back on top. And so they have a tendency to forget all that, you know. He's back on top, and this is what he's saying. That's why he's so popular. And so the others are just seemingly playing you know, status quo. That's what they call them, the status quo. They just want to kind of stay in the neutral area and just whatever gets your vote, that's what I'll say, that's what I'll believe. And people are sick and tired of that kind of leadership. Okay? Well, Jesus didn't want that kind of leadership in Peter. He wanted to be strong and affirmative and confident. Okay? And it took a rebuild in order to get in there. Okay? All right. So where'd we stop?
Halfway through, number 6.
Let's see, number 7, yes, son of Barjona was back, okay, we read that. Oh, in verse 9, do we read verse 9?
Yeah, we did, not already.
No, okay, all right, let's have, Brian, would you like to read 10 and 11 and 12? And again, I'll warn you, we may stop you in the middle of this.
Okay. He discovered that Jesus wasn't as much interested in one's mistakes or failures or in their backgrounds as much as he is interested in what they're willing to do for him now that in their present lives. And just as there was much for Peter to learn, so is there for us to learn as we too enroll in the same school. Peter finally graduated and went on to become a solid preacher for the cause of Christ. He finally did become converted, just as Jesus prayed he would.
That's another thing that kind of baffles me. Jesus, the Son of God, praying for us. You know, we think of ourselves praying, praying to the Lord, and this, but he's flipping it right back down and praying for us. What do you think about that, Rachel? Have you ever thought about that? Isn't that something though? You know, we you know, as people we pray, we're commanded to pray, you know, because it's, you know, it's something we should do to God, notice. But then he's praying for us. That's just amazing how he intercedes to the Father for us. That's amazing. That's just amazing. With that kind of backing, wow, with that kind of backing, how can we utterly fail? We can fall, but how can we utterly fail?
Do you think Jesus was praying kind of like how the Holy Spirit prays for us now? Like when we say something, if we mess it up terribly, then the Holy Spirit's like, okay, God, this is what you meant.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah.
You think that's what was going on, kind of?
Well, I kind of picture it as, you know, he is, I kind of drop back and get the picture as he is our high priest, okay? And as high priest, he's our mediator between the Father, whom we can't see, and us, okay? And so he mediates and goes to the Father on our behalf, okay? And in this case, he says, I'm praying for you, I'm you know, mediating for you, you know, as if to say, you know, Father, you know, be mindful of this man that I've trained. You know, he's going to fail here shortly. And he's going to, you know, deny me, your son. But I'm praying for him. In other words, I'm not willing to give up on him or throw him away. I'm praying for him. So like he's mediating to the Father on behalf of Peter. Okay? And I think that could be said for all of us. You know, he knows our failures and faults and behind us and even in front of us. But I just picture him going to the Father on our behalf, okay, as our mediator. In fact, isn't it Hebrews 4:14 through 16? Let's just go there real quick. Does that answer your question, or did I skirt it all around?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Hebrews 4. Oh, it's after 11 here. Let's just go to Hebrews 4, 14 through 16, and then we'll stop there. And Rachel, we'll go ahead and give that to you. Hebrews 4:14 through the end of the chapter there.
Seeing then that we have a great high priest that is passed under the heavens, Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold fast our profession. For we have not an high priest which cannot be touched with the feelings of our infirmities, but was in all points tempted like as we are, yet without sin. Let us therefore come boldly under the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need.
All right, so he stands there as that mediator to help us, to actually help us in the time that we need it. Okay? All right. Let's stop right there then. Yes, Jeannie's got a question? Oh. Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Right? He's saying that Satan is our adversary and he will accuse us before God. And I'm just interpreting what you're saying, and Jesus is there to advocate for us. So you've got a dynamics there of Satan as our accuser, and Jesus as our arbitrator, as they both go to the Lord, one on our behalf and the other against us. Is that what you're saying, Jeannie, pretty much? Okay, all right. Well, we're going to close in prayer. Thank you, Jeannie, for those thoughts. That's a good thought. We got one working for us. We got one working against us. Okay, but thankfully the Lord knows us and is not quick to throw us out, but to work with us. So, all right, let's close in prayer.